Hi, my name's Jireh Scheurwater. I'm one of the pastors at Cairns Baptist, and welcome to Conversations. Things look a little bit different this week, I know. We're not sitting on the stage at the church, we're not sitting on the couch. That's because we've decided to go for a bit of a trip down memory lane. We're looking at the history of Cairns Baptist Church. We're talking to some people about their memories from their time at the church. We're talking about some of the great moments in the church life. We're talking about things that mattered to them, might be places, people, events, or ministries. But this is about celebrating the life of the church. This is about celebrating who we were and where we've come from, and also where we're going. So rather than interview people on the couch this week, we've decided to let them tell their story to camera. We've asked them three very basic questions. Firstly, how long have you been part of the church? Secondly, what are some of your great memories from the church? And lastly, what is your hope for the church? I trust you'll be blessed by this. I trust you'll enjoy this trip down and looking at the past of the church. But also, I would ask that you would pray for us about the future of our church, what that might look like, where we might be going, and how we will continue to impact our community for Christ. A couple of things though, if you want to get in touch with us, as always, you can do so community@cairnsbaptist.org.au. You can also find our conversations and our previous sermons on YouTube. Just search Cairns Baptist Church on YouTube and you'll find our channel right there. And of course, you can also catch up on what's happening in life of the church on the podcast, which sometimes might be a little bit strange as the pastors reveal their innermost thoughts. But it's always a good time, it's always a good laugh, and it's always insightful as to what's been happening. If you would like to contribute to the ministry of the church and give to the ministries of the church, you can do so through the Tithely app, or you can do so via the church website, or you can drop in and see us in person. We'd love to catch up and say hi. Enjoy this time. I trust that you are blessed by it. I trust that you will join me in prayer for our church as we continue to look for what God would have us do as a fellowship in this Cairns community.
Well, I came to the church as a babe in arms with my mum in 1937, and I suppose you could say from about the early 40s, when the war was on and that I became part of the church as a child, and then in the Sunday school, and then young people and so on. But from Ernie Edwards to Josh McGinty, every minister in our church preached the gospel as we know it, as recorded in the Bible, in Jonah and 6 days of creation and all the things that there was never any discrepancy in any of their ministries. And every time they preached in the evening, they had an appeal, and it was a very evangelistic church. And one of the things that you remember is when you were converted in the church in 1949. I was converted under the ministry of Wilbur Fletcher and baptized a couple of years later by Reg Jarrett. Now both those fellows became state evangelists. Wilbur Fletcher was the first one, and Reg Jarrett probably 10 years later he became state evangelist. That's the sort of caliber of man that were the ministers at Cairns Baptist Church. We had very, very good, we didn't call them elders in them days, they were deacons. I can remember old Alf Kent. He was a wonderful a mentor for me, if you like. And he was a furniture manufacturer, and he used to preach, and he'd hold up his hands, and he had fingers missing on all his hands from his furniture machines. And it was most peculiar to see Alf. That's the thing I remember about him, but I know I should remember his ministry. He was almost blind from cataracts, and he still preached. His wife used to help him and coax him and get him to preach, and he was a marvellous old man. And Mr. Murgard was another one, Louis Murgard. His nephew was the Reverend Norm Murgard. There were my dad, my Uncle Stan, all Merv Tappenden, all wonderful men who kept the Normie Wiles. Normie Wiles, that's Royce's father, he was the minute secretary for as long as I can remember. He had a great big minute book that I now can't find. I have looked everywhere for it. It was a thick book, about 2 inches thick, and foolscap size, very hard cover, and it had all the minutes from 1936, I think, until about 1960s. Yeah, the church, I think, played an important part in the wartime because of the demeanour of the people. Well, the Catalina squadron was where the tennis court is now, right up to the hospital, but right down to the city centre too. And a lot of those fellas came to the church. A lot of them had their last first church service in our church before they were killed in action. Catalinas were very vulnerable, but so necessary to supply the Coast Guard. One fellow I can particularly remember was the squadron leader, and his name was Vic Knowles, and he was called Vic the Catman. And all these fellas were Australians, but then the Americans came in, and they were very well heeled with money, and very polite fellas. And one time I was sitting in the porch of the church, and I could see a whole lot of soldiers coming down Lake Street from Florence Street, and they sergeant halted them at the church and single filed them into the church, about 50 soldiers, all for the church service, and they were everywhere. They sat on the floor, they sat on the windowsills, anywhere they could find a bit to plonk themselves down, they did. And I never seen collection plates with so much money in all my life as those collection plates that were taken up that day from those soldiers. Every Sunday evening, the women of the church, my mum, Mrs. Kent, Mrs. Murgard, my grandma, Annie Simpson, and a lot of the Winson girls, they all used to bring in food, and they'd make great big pots of coffee for the Americans, and they really enjoyed it. And they were so thankful that they got a bit of family home-cooked meals, I suppose, and they had could relate to their family at home by what they had at the church. Some of those blokes were converted in the church too by the ministers at that time. As I said, some of the fellows took up with girls from the church. Ray Somerville, he was a sergeant in the transport section, and he married one of the girls from the church, Ev Lehman, and Millie Winson was very involved with Les Stevenson, and Les was killed in a Catalina operation, and Millie never ever married anybody else. And that was very sad when Les knew he was going to die. He knew that he would not survive the mission he was scheduled to go on, and that he would be with his Lord in glory the next day. How hard it is to think that these blokes went through that when you knew what was going to happen to you. Terrible, but they faced it bravely. I really think that those fellas really appreciated the church. And appreciated is not really a good word, because they'd been away from home for a long time and away from their churches and everything, and their families and everything, and it brought back a bit of family, and they used to give the old women a great big hug, and you know they was starved of caring, and they liked people to care for them, and the church cared for them, and fussed over them, if you like, and that's what I really think that it had a part to play, and it played it well. The general public in Cairns at that time would be probably between 8 and 10,000, very, very small. A lot of people evacuated away from Cairns because of the threat of capture. And the general feeling amongst the general population was one of wanting to entreat the Lord to help them, and consequently the churches were quite well patronised and quite well with people worshipping it around that time. Not so today, I'm afraid to say. One day I was coming home, all dirt roads, no bitumen, all dirt roads, gravel roads, and here's a canister lying on the side of the road, like a hexagon profile, about 400 long, I suppose, and I picked it up and brought it home, and I gave it to Dad, and I said to Dad, put it on the bench, and that afternoon Travers Reese come over. Travers was the RAP, that's the first aid man at the airport, and he come over and he said to Dad, where'd you get that? And he said, oh, Grayson brought it home, picked it up on the road. He said, you know what it is? And Dad said, no, I haven't got a clue what it is. He said, it's an incendiary bomb. And of course he confiscated it, and they took it over the airport and let it off. I must tell you about the fence. You, the fence was first mentioned before I ever went to the church, which is 1936. One of the first things they wanted to do was to get old Langan, Dr. Langan, to help them to build a fence between his property and the church. There was nothing there except a spoon drain that ran down the side of the church, and the manse was at the back of the church. And the kids used to run over there, and he didn't like the kids on his lawn and everything, so they decided that they'd build a fence. Do you know when that fence was built? In 1958. I'd like to say the greatest things I find in the church is my conversion and the church and the people who taught me and challenged me into, and then to go on to baptism and to follow Jesus. Sure, in my younger days, I wandered away at times, but the Lord brought me home, and now I don't think I could live without Jesus. I tell you, He's so much security in my life. He's so much there to help me through the day. As you get older, you get a bit feeble, and you can't do what you'd like to do. And Jesus is a good resting place to be a strength in your weakness. I know probably the best thing that happened to me in the church is meeting Norma. Norma came to the church, and I thought, oh, who's this girl coming in? And I might add that one of the minister at the time got us to get together, and of course we've been married 61 years now, and that's another thing, that the church, the meeting together brings about the young people into their relationship for the rest of their lives. Otherwise, how does it happen? How's it going to happen electronically? But it was certainly one of the best times in my life. I don't know about Norma, but I really look back and think what a wonderful thing it was that Norma came. She was converted in City Tab in Brisbane when she was a nurse, and then come to Cairns and just wandered into the church, and there we are, 61 years later, still in the church.
Well, we came in 1997, yeah. We stayed here at this church for many, many years. We wanted some real dinky-dyed truth, the Bible as it's meant to be understood, and not reinterpreted to suit emotions and so on, which we felt was happening with a prosperity type of teaching. This church was staying to the Bible, so we stayed with this church. Okay, street level youth care was the number one thing about this church that helped us to decide, come to Cairns Baptist. They are following Matthew 25. Let us go out and help those who are suffering and disenfranchised and lacking in any meaningful contact with Christians. We need to be Christians out there on the street. Street level is many things. It's not just giving food. That's the draw card. Once they come to the van, we sit them down, we talk about their problems, and then they open up and we talk to them about the answer. And most of the time, it's just amazing how much they want to talk about their needs. And so it may look like we're a food van, but we're really actually a spiritual supply van. Rhett Milbourne, I hope you can interview him sometime. He's our drummer at our church, and he drums around here too, used to. He was converted 20 years ago. And then there's many others who came to the Lord through street level youth care. There's actually 150 altogether that came to the Lord through the teamwork of street level youth care. The two main ones that stand out for me, okay, are Rhett Milbourne and Jason Wardle. They both, I remember clearly, they were both converted because of my desire to see them saved. I remember how much I really wanted to see them saved. I was praying for days and days and days before those nights, and then I went out away from the food van, looking. God led me away from the food van, hunting for these guys, and I don't know. He just seemed to lead me to them, and there they were, and it was just wonderful to see how God brought them through, just through talking about their needs and leading them to Jesus. It seemed so easy, but that's the Holy Spirit at work, And now these two guys are strong Christians, not without their problems, but they love the Lord. And there's plenty of other guys like that, and girls, I remember so clearly the young people that we've brought to the Lord at Street Level Youth Care. Now, there's many other things that I find a feature of Street Level Youth Care over the 17 years that I was active. We took them up Mount Bartle Frere. We took them kayaking on the Mulgrave River, trying to make up for their lonely lives, something that normal people, family people, do have that they missed through getting into drugs and stuff. We gave them those experiences that show them that God is great, that He's made a beautiful creation for them to enjoy. We took them to Camp Tinaroo, a Christian camp, and took them out there for a couple of nights. And all that kind of activity is what we did for about 10 years before the regulations made it too difficult for us. But those are some of the things that Street Level Youth Care, in its heyday, was really good at. Generally, we'd have 10 to 15 kids turning up every night. And some of them would just take their food and go straight away, but half of them would like to sit down and like to unburden their lives to us, because there's no other way that they can share their lives with people, and they know that we care. And then they come up to the van and pick some clothes out to take away, and a few of them would say, we have got nowhere to sleep, and we'd find places for them to live for a few nights. Yeah.
So you almost had like a CBC SES type thing happening.
That's right. Not just me. In 2007, Kim Grossman got me going, because he looked after a cyclone damage happening in Innisfail, and we helped the people of Innisfail in 2007. That spurred me to do something in 2011 with Cyclone Yasi. So for 10 weeks in March of 2011 and April, I took beautiful people from this church in our bus down to Tully and helped all these people around Tully clean up the yards, and it was a wonderful time. We loved it, and it really helped the Tully Baptist Church to be a great witness to the district of Tully. Okay, that's a wonderful question. It really means a lot to me about what can we do during COVID time? And I've written an article about how we should be changing as Christians due to COVID. I believe our church should be out there, at least with a letterbox ministry, putting into the letterboxes of people, because that's usually the way to get through to people these days, what can be done because of COVID. You know, how COVID should be something that makes us wake up and realise there's something serious going on. It could be the last days, and God could be telling us something through COVID. You know, it's a worldwide phenomenon that we should not be ignoring. The church should be waking up and using it as a tool to reach out to the world. I'm really, really happy to recommend street level youth care to the people of this church. At the moment, we have hardly anybody working, and there's a huge need out there in Harold Falch Park in Menunda, and we only have, when COVID lets us go, we're going back on Thursdays and Mondays. We want to be there every night, like Harold wanted us. I think to honour Harold, we need to get street level back where it was. And we need to change a bit, because what we're seeing in street level now is not just young people, we're seeing families that are struggling. And they really do appreciate us there. We're seeing lots of people here in the gospel, and there's such a great need out there in that suburb, like the 3Ms, Menunda, Murrabul, and Manura. That's a fantastic place for street level youth care. I always told Harold, let's go out there, Harold, that's where the need is. He said, it's too dangerous, Hank, too dangerous. But it is now the place where we are, and it is safe. And it's Harold Falch Park. Let's use it.
I suppose, first of all, I should say it's nice here to talk to you today, Jireh. How long have you been part of Cairns Baptist? Well, John and I came up here from Adelaide in 1998. John was here for a couple of weeks, and then he had to go back to Adelaide with our business. So myself and Vincent, our youngest, was just going into year 8, which we thought was a good time for him to start a new school, new friends. At that time, we tried a couple of churches we didn't feel at home with. And then Vincent said, hi, Mum, in the Cairns Post, there's a church in town called Cairns Baptist. And I said, oh, never been a Baptist before, but we'll give it a try. So Vincent and I, because John had gone back by then, so Vincent and I trot off to church in the morning, and people were very nice, smile and nodding and everything. And so, of course, we sat at the back, Vincent and I, and I just happened to sit next to Jenny Woodman's mum, who I've knew afterwards. She was a lovely lady, but she talked to me really well. She really gave me a good impression of the church, although she was on holiday. But that was her, lovely lady. And then afterwards, Vincent said, "Oh, let's fill out the care card, Mum." And I said, "Yes, all right." So anyway, he filled it out. And Jenny's mum said, "Oh, I can hand that in for you." So that was us trapped. But then, lo and behold, Chris Orlick turns up one day, and I wasn't home, so he came back. And Vince and I thought, well, this is really good, because there was heaps of things for him to be involved in, the same as myself. And I was really happy with the friendly, outgoing nature of the church, which I hadn't found in the other churches we tried. So that was really what drew me to come to Cairns Baptist Church and stay here for nearly 23 years. things have changed, but I think we've changed with it. So that's really, really happy. A little while after we're here, Gary and Sue McGinty came to the church, and they did a program by Rick Warren called 40 Days of Purpose. And Gary asked John if he could be the administrator for the 40 Days of Purpose. Yeah, so doing the 40 Days of Purpose, that was really a lead into John doing the administration work and more involved with the membership of the church, and a bit of a leading role in, if there was something going on, then it was John and Chris that helped out that. I mean, John has always said we're a team. You don't get one when you get us. So I've sort of helped out with organising things and doing things with the ladies and helping out with different organisations at different times. I was here in the church one day and Jenny Woodman was talking about what was happening with the playgroup, and I had this call. I think it was a message from God to tell me that Jenny needs a bit of help. I think you could do that because I recently retired. John has kept working, but I had retired. So I asked Jenny if she could do with some help, and she said that she never asks anyone to do anything because she feels that they need to be drawn to do that work. And although many years I'd been associated with the church, I'd never really done anything with children. I tried RE for a couple of years, but I've never been fit out for RE. But playgroup, you know, it's really structured. Jenny is a fantastic leader. She was a teacher, and she's got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of toys and books and things for kids. And she's really been an influence with me over the last few years. I mean, I know lots of people here, but Jenny has been the one that helped me in this direction. It's really a shame that because of COVID, we can't do it anymore. I think we'll talk about in years pre-COVID and after COVID, and it will come probably next year. Will be never be back to normal again, but I think that's probably where we as a church and Christians can help people come back to normal, where there's a need. We should show that do as Jesus told us, to be a friend. And I think that's what Jenny in the playgroup is more structure and leader, and she will talk to the mums, and she's taught me that you don't talk Bible or God to them. You just show them how you live. You're interested in them. And in the years I've been going there, Jenny knows all the names of the people, and it's been a great help to me to try and do the playgroup work. And it's just so good. You get all these mums. Some of them are church people, not necessarily to our church, but Christians. But the ones that don't know the Lord, at the end of playgroup, Jenny will say, right, we sing songs, and it's wonderful to see the kids singing and dancing and clapping, little tiny ones. But we always say a short prayer, and of the songs we sing, there's always one Christian song, so that when we do talk about Jesus to the kids, they have a bit of a start, even though they may not ever go to Sunday school. But they do know of Jesus as being a real person, a friend for them. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mention that the playgroup is actually held in Jenny's house. And if anybody ever goes past Jenny's house and looks over the fence, it looks like a toy store. So we have the party, and we do a nativity. So they get the theme for the real Christmas. Yes, I've been very sad that we haven't had the playgroup since February, March. And we keep trying to see whether we can get it going again, but it really looks like it's going to be next year, I think, before we actually get going. And what playgroup will look like next year, nobody knows. They stay around because they either like the other ladies that are there, or they want to talk to Jenny or myself. But Jenny she texts them she used to text them when things were on, or text them if somebody had a problem. But it's amazing the number of mums that if they have a problem, they ask if we can pray for them. And we do that in the time when we have the short prayers at the end of the music time. I suppose really, I hope that we can pick out the best bits of the church and things that we've done, and reinvigorate and hope that people feel a call to do things here, if it means a large group or a small group, home groups, and they feel that they can come here and talk to the pastors, or meet here with some of the senior members of the church. I don't mean seniors in age, I mean people, mature Christians, that they will come here, that people will know that it's a building where good people are, and that we can again do outreach again with street level and other things that we were doing in the church. I know that the evangelistic team have been going out there. That's been fantastic. But actually having things here as a base.
Well, mate, we moved to Cairns Baptist in April 1985, and it was an interesting time because I came up not knowing anything about the church, and in April I came for a week. I drove all the way up from Brisbane, where we were living at the time, and have a guess where I stayed, in the motel in Lake Street, right opposite the Baptist church. And when I got up the morning after I'd arrived, I didn't notice the Baptist church there. I booked in, and the next morning I got up and I was having breakfast out in the restaurant, and I said to the guy, "Oh, there's a Baptist church opposite." And he said to me, "This is the first thing I heard about Baptist church. They're alive, that church over there. Every day of the week there's something going on over there." So, that was a good thing to hear about Cairns Baptist Church. And that was the truth, because we were involved in lots of ministries when we came there. There are all the ministries we have now, but we also had Boys Brigade and Girls Brigade, and so there, every night of the week there was something going on. Well, I first came to Cairns and I was running my own business. So I took a while to settle into that, but then I got involved in mainly kids ministry, helping in kids church and Sunday school. I didn't get involved in Boys Brigade because I knew that if I did get involved, I'd be a lot more involved than I wanted to be. So Elizabeth got involved with the Girls Brigade, and our kids went, but I used to do a lot of way tripping with my job, so to make a commitment to go to something regular every week was difficult for me. And then I went on, as we'd been at the church for a few years, I got coerced to go onto the board, and at one stage I was the church secretary. And when Alan Bartlam was there, he instigated a change in the constitution which brought elders on board, and I was approached to become one of the church's first elders along with Phil Corey. And I'd basically served in various capacities on the board and the eldership of the church for about 30 years, or maybe that's stretching it a bit, maybe 25 years, and recently retired a couple of years ago. Oh, lots of memories. One thing that I loved about our church was that we were a very mission-minded church, and we had lots of missionaries actually get called into full-time service through our church, people like Nick and Rhoda Crook, who went to Japan as missionaries, and Nick's now the Queensland Director of OMF, and lots of other missionaries that went out. I should have written their names down so I could sprout them all off to you, but anyway, that's one thing that really encouraged me. And the other thing was that our church back in those days was very active in planting churches, and as you know, we planted a church at Northern Beaches, we planted a church at Mulgrave, and that took a toll on the church because a lot of people went, and a lot of people that were involved in ministry at our church went into those churches and planted them. Well, one thing in community that I've noticed changing is the relationship between us and other churches, particularly Baptist churches, and between the churches that we planted. We used to have great inter-church camping. We had picnics, we had cricket games. We used to have a big concert that one of your family members, Andrew Farnsworth, used to get going and invite all the churches to. And in those days, the pastors, I don't know whether they still do, from all the Baptist churches used to get together regularly to support each other, to encourage each other. And I noticed for some reason or other that sort of inter-church stuff seems to have fallen by the wayside. I miss that.
If you had to describe Cairns Adventures to someone that's never been part of it, how would you describe it?
Hard work. But an amazing tool to reach out into the community and to win boys and girls for Jesus. And we started it off, and I ran it, I think, for about 8 years in a row. For the mid-year school holidays in June, we would have it for a whole week, from just in the mornings till lunchtime. And then on the Friday night, we would have all the family of all the kids that came during the week to a big barbecue, and we put on a concert for the parents, and the kids got all their awards and things they'd worked for during the week, and all the competitions we had colouring in competitions. We had them broken up into teams in age groups, and we had various competitions with their games and sporting and learning their memory verse. If someone could get up and say the 5 memory verses for the whole week in front of all their parents, they got a prize. So yeah, it was a great opportunity. I actually had a parent at one of the funerals we had at our church recently come to me and thank me for having her kids at Cairns Adventures so many years ago, and say that they're both walking with the Lord still, and the early stages of learning about Jesus, and those seeds that were planted have come to fruition in their lives. And that was really encouraging to me, because we don't know, when we bring kids into from outside the church into something like that, what's going to happen in the future to them. And it's good to hear that kids did come to Jesus, and many kids made commitments through Cairns Adventures, and it was a great ministry. Well, I remember we had an American couple with some of their family come one year, and they wanted to know if they were staying for a couple of weeks whether they could help in Cairns Adventures. And we said, yes, come along. And we didn't have all the checks and balances in place that we have now. You'd have to get someone to do the special child safe program before you let them come. But they came, and you know what? They came back every year for about 3 or 4 years and brought team members from their church in Texas, they were, and they learnt and watched what we did, and they went back and put it in place in their own church. And that was a really encouraging event that happened. Well, it had a pretty big impact because we used to have the same families coming and bringing their kids from prep. We used to run it from prep to grade 7, and some of the kids would come and they'd come year after year after year and just go into the different groups. We used to advertise through the Christian schools, and we used to advertise through some of the state schools with people that work there, people like Jenny Woodman, who would go out and she was a teacher at Balaclava School and not Balaclava, what's the other one down the road? Parramatta Park School, and she would let the kids know that it was going on. So we had lots of kids coming from all over the place. But another thing it used to do, it got a lot of people in our church involved. We used to have a team of 30 plus, and everyone had their jobs. We had people like Norma that would do all the morning teas and cook lunch for all the workers, and they did it sacrificially for, every year that we were doing it. We had the same team, and it grew. Some of our church members that didn't really be involved, they used to come along, and we had no trouble getting volunteers in those days. I don't know what the problem is now, but nobody wants to volunteer. Now we've got these super duper paid pastors. We don't need volunteers, but truly we do. I think my hope for the church is that it'll just continue on being light and salt in the community as it has been for the last 80 years, to meet together and encourage each other and use our gifts and abilities and skills that God's given us to minister to each other in a corporate sense is important as well.
So I kind of grew up in this church, Jireh, as you know. So quite honestly, my earliest memories are in this church and with a lot of the congregation that are still here now. So it's, I would think 40 years, give or take, off and on, take some off. There's lots of great memories that we've had in this church. Lots of fun things that have happened. I've got to say, growing up, I think my fondest memories are with my mates, and we used to go around down the side of the church there, where the freezers and stuff are now, and the little kindergarten area there, and we used to play handball around there. But it wasn't just any normal handball; it was handball to maim. That is definitely a really good memory and a painful memory. But lots of good memories. Obviously, we were married by Chris Ulick, who was the pastor of the church here quite a while ago, and all our boys have been dedicated here in the church and with the congregation. So it holds a very special place in our heart. Yeah, youth group. We had a few different leaders. So we had Sue Carruthers, of course, and Sue and Barry Carruthers. We had Harold Fouge. Great memories with Harold. And we had Jeff Meadows as well, I think, as one of our leaders coming through. Yeah. So lots of good memories, lots of really good times with the guys then. Still very good friends with a lot of the guys that I went to youth group with. Some of them have left the church now, but it's still good. We still catch up, and they're still really good mates. We don't talk about the raft building. Secret squirrel. No, look, honestly, that was some amazing memories of going out to Rosslyn Lock and building rafts. For those who don't know and who are new to the church from back then, we used to have a big raft regatta between a lot of the churches here in Cairns. So we'd all go out to Rosslyn Lock, and there were certain rules you had to follow. You had to build your own raft, and it was good fun. And there was probably a lot of dung thrown during those battles. There was probably a lot of fruit thrown. Great memories. Boys Brigade. Yeah, Boys Brigade was awesome. So it was, I guess it's how would you explain it? It's kind of like a club, I guess, or like your scouts sort of thing. However, it had a lot more focus on, I guess, discipline and parade work, a bit more regimented, I suppose, modelled off, say, an army type mentality, but very, very laid back at the same time. We could almost say, like, maybe not army, we could say navy, considering our captain was Captain Cook. But anyway, we won't go there. That's just silly. When I first started off, I was typical, probably a bit of a lazy young boy, going through doing things and really just turning up to the events and just having fun with the guys and the mates. But I think as I got older, when I got into my teenage years, is probably when or not my teenage years, but probably grade 9 or 10 is probably when I started really understanding what it was more about and really putting a lot of effort into it. And you did things like polishing your brass of your belts, and all your brass had to be polished, just like in the army, I suppose. And you're all graded on that each week, which is cool. And it's actually quite funny. I was actually going through my stuff the other day, and I found my badges from Boys Brigade. Yes, I still have my badges, David. And yeah, going back and looking at all those badges and how many years it was, and what rank we got up to, a sergeant, and your Duke of Edinburgh awards, your Queen's Badge awards, and probably my most favourite award actually out of all of those sort of awards was the Community Service Award, because that was something I really liked about Boys Brigade, was that we actually went out into the community as part of that award and volunteered for things. So that was something that I remember distinctly, actually, going back and doing. And of course, we were always part of Anzac Day parades and things like that. I think I remember fainting on one of those Anzac parades because it was so hot in Munro Martin Park, but let's not go there. I'm big and strong and tough, honest. Yeah, that's an interesting question. We actually, I'm thinking back now, we actually came back to visit for some reason. I can't remember exactly why. We just came back to visit for something that was happening. I think it's something to do with you guys, actually. And we came back, and it was the warmness of the welcome that we got when we walked back in the door. And you walk back in the door and seeing familiar faces, the warmness of the people, the inviting nature of the congregation. That was why we came back. Sure, we've got memories of things that have happened in this church, but all those memories are really about people, not the building. The building's just walls, concrete and brick and etc. But reality is, we came back because of the people, and it's been fantastic ever since. Probably my best memories, quite honestly, are when we dedicated the boys in the church. Standing up here with Gary and Josh, dedicating our boys to God, and the congregation, the church, dedicating to help raise our boys. That was, I think that's probably one of my special memories. Yeah. I think my hope for Cairns Baptist is not to lose focus on the fact that it's about the people. Like I said, that's why we came back. That's the focus the church needs to have, is on the people in the church, making sure they're looked after, making sure they feel welcome, and I hope to see that our church goes forward in leaps and bounds, and just continues the minister to people of Cairns. And ministering to Cairns is done by each and every one of the people here. So
Hi everyone, thank you for joining us again this week. I trust that you feel inspired by what you've heard tonight. If you'd like to know more information, community@cairnsbaptist.org.au is the email address. You can find out what's been going on the podcast on Tuesdays, as I mentioned earlier, or you can find our back catalogue on YouTube. Just search Cairns Baptist Church. It's been great to share this with you, and I look forward to seeing you in the future. Thanks, guys.